If tomorrow the things were gone, worked for all my life, and I had to start again, just my children and my wife, I thank my lucky stars to be living here today. Such affection and so freedom, I can't take that away.
Russell is the son of a career military officer. His home address spans some 11 states and 7 countries before settling down with his family in Johnstown. He's a fifth-generation soldier. He began his military career as an enlisted man, attended West Point, graduated from Louisiana State University, and earned his commission through Officers Candidate School at Fort Benning, Georgia. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, Bill and his wife, T.E.A, pregnant with their second child, were at work at the Pentagon during the terrorist attack. After confirming his safety, he joined hundreds of survivors in an unprecedented rescue and recovery operation. Their son was born 3 months after the attack, becoming the youngest Pentagon survivor, September 11th, 2001. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome to Mr. Bill Russell.
Thank you so much. It is an incredible pleasure to be here with you today, and I am truly honored. As we're remembering September 11th and the things that followed up, I want to touch on 2 particular points. One is the presence of the hand of God in the creation and the protection of this nation. And 2, just as so many of you are here within the spirit of the Tea Parties and the 9/11 Project, to talk a little bit about how September the 11th brought out the best in us. Now, when the Founding Fathers gathered to put their signatures on the birth certificate of our nation, they did so with a firm reliance on the protection of divine providence as they made that pledge that Tim Krieger cited earlier, of pledging their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor. But when we look at the hand of God in the creation of our nation, perhaps it is no more clear than when we look at the history and George Washington's armies. You'll have to forgive me, this feedback is throwing me a little bit. But when we look at George Washington and his escape from Long Island, and whether we consider it was the unusual northerly wind that kept the British fleet out of Long Island, or out of Long Island Sound, and prevented them from sailing up the Hudson River, or the very unusual fog for an August day that lasted well after the morning and well after the sun had risen high enough to burn it off. And when we look at those winds that kept the British fleet out of New York Harbor and out of the river, to also notice that those winds had shifted to allow the Long Island fishermen who were evacuating George Washington's army from Long Island over to Manhattan Island, and allowed them to do so more quickly. And then the way the fog lifted off the fields that George Washington's army had occupied on Long Island, facing down the British chapters. But the way that fog had lifted as George Washington departed on the last boat carrying the last American soldiers to Manhattan. And both George Washington and the British commander on site noted in their diaries that George Washington's army should have been destroyed on Long Island, but that clearly the hand of God had intervened and helped him to escape. When we look at the events of September the 11th in 2001, and what should have been a massive terrorist victory, we can clearly see the hand of God and His presence in helping to protect America still. In the World Trade Centers, 60,000 people worked in those two buildings, but yet less than 3,000 died from those attacks. It was by virtue of the fact that the planes hit about a half an hour too early, before most people had actually arrived from work. When we look at the Pentagon, it's a building where 25,000 people work, and ultimately the plane that hit the building I was in destroyed approximately 5% of the building. But one of the interesting things that occurred was that I worked in the Directorate of Army Operations, and we were scheduled to move that directorate into the newly renovated part of the building. But that move had been delayed by 1 week. And so when that plane impacted the building, it impacted largely empty offices. And where we easily could have had as many as 2,500 casualties in the Pentagon on that day, less than 100 in the building were killed. Or excuse me, right at 100. So we see the hand of God simply in the numbers, but we can also look at how He influences their actions. I personally feel a deep debt of gratitude to the people on Flight 93.